This tokens per month is like grown 50 times in the last 12 months.
Is that accurate, by the way?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is
Okay,
accurate. I'm glad it got it right. But that number was 9.7 trillion tokens per month 12 months ago, right? It's gone up to 480. It's a 50x increase. So there's no limit to human curiosity, and I think it's one of those moments. Maybe I don't think it is there today, but maybe one day there's a 5-word phrase which says what the actual universe is, or something like that, and something very meaningful. But I don't think we are quite there yet.
Do you think the scaling laws are holding strong on? There's a lot of ways to describe the scaling laws for AI, but on the pre-training, on the post-training fronts. So the flip side of that, do you anticipate AI progress will hit a wall? Is there a wall?
It's a cherished micro kitchen conversation. Once in a while, I
Yes.
have it. Like when Demis is visiting, or Demis, Korai, Jeff, Noam, Sergey, a bunch of our people. We sit and talk about this, right? And look, we see a lot of headroom ahead, right? I think we've been able to optimize and improve on all fronts, right? Pre-training, post-training, test time compute, tool use, right? Over time, making these more agentic. So getting these models to be more general world models in that direction, like VO3, the physics understanding is dramatically better than what like the VO1 or something like that was. So you kind of see on all those dimensions, I feel, the progress is very obvious to see. And I feel like there is significant headroom. More importantly, I'm fortunate to work with some of the best researchers on the planet, right? They think there is more headroom to be had here. And so I think we have an exciting trajectory ahead. It's tougher to say, each year I sit and say, okay, we're going to throw 10x more compute over the course of next year at it. And will we see progress? Sitting here today, I feel like the year ahead will have a lot of progress.
And do you feel any limitations like that, or the bottlenecks, compute limited, data limited, idea limited? Do you feel any of those limitations, or is it full steam ahead on all fronts?
I think it's compute limited in this sense, right? We can all, part of the reason you've seen us do Flash, Nano Flash, and Pro models, but not an Ultra model. It's like for each generation, we feel like we've been able to get the Pro model at 80, 90% of Ultra's capability, but Ultra would be a lot more slow and a lot more expensive to serve. But what we've been able to do is to go to the next generation and make the next generation's Pro as good as the previous generation's Ultra, but be able to serve it in a way that it's fast and you can use it and so on. So I do think scaling laws are working, but it's tough to get at any given time. The models we all use the most is maybe like a few months behind the maximum capability we can deliver, right? Because that won't be the fastest, easiest to use, etc.
Also, that's in terms of intelligence. It becomes harder and harder to measure performance, in quotes, because you could argue Gemini Flash is much more impactful than Pro, just because of the latency. It's super intelligent already. I mean, sometimes latency is maybe more important than intelligence, especially when the intelligence is just a little bit less. And Flash, it's still an incredibly smart model.
Yeah.
And so you have to now start measuring impact. And then it feels like benchmarks are less and less capable of capturing the intelligence of models, the effectiveness of models, the usefulness, the real world usefulness of models. Another kitchen question. So lots of folks are talking about timelines for AGI or ASI, artificial superintelligence. So AGI, loosely defined, is basically human expert level at a lot of the main fields of pursuit for humans. And ASI is what AGI becomes presumably quickly by being able to self-improve. So becoming far superior in intelligence across all these disciplines than humans. When do you think we'll have AGI? Is 2030 a possibility?
There's one other term we should throw in there. I don't know who used it first. Maybe Karpati did. AJI. Have you heard AJI? The artificial jagged intelligence. Sometimes feels that way, right? Both there are progress and you see what they can do, and then you can trivially find they make numerical errors or counting R's in strawberry or something, which seems to trip up most models or whatever it is, right? So maybe we should throw that term in there. I feel like we are in the AJI phase where dramatic progress, some things don't work well, but overall, you're seeing lots of progress. But if your question is, will it happen by 2030? Look, we constantly move the line of what it means to be AGI. There are moments today, like sitting in a Waymo in a San Francisco street with all the crowds and the people and kind of work its way through. I see glimpses of it there. The car is sometimes kind of impatient, trying to work its way, using Astra, like in Gemini Live, or seeing, asking questions about the world.
What's this skinny building doing in my neighborhood?
It's a street light, not a building.
You see glimpses. That's why I use the word AGI, because then you see stuff which obviously, we are far from AGI too. So you have both experiences simultaneously happening to you. I'll answer your question, but I'll also throw out this. I almost feel the term doesn't matter. What I know is by 2030, there'll be such dramatic progress. We'll be dealing with the consequences of that progress, both the positives, both the positive externalities and the negative externalities that come with it in a big way by 2030. So that I strongly feel, right? Whatever we may be arguing about the term, or maybe Gemini can answer what that moment is in time in 2030. But I think the progress will be dramatic, right? So that I believe in. Will the AI think it has reached AGI by 2030? I would say we will just fall short of that timeline, right? So I think it'll take a bit longer. It's amazing. In the early days of Google DeepMind in 2010, they talked about a 20-year time frame to achieve AGI. So which is kind of fascinating to see. But for me, the whole thing, seeing what Google Brain did in 2012, and when we acquired DeepMind in 2014, right close to where we are sitting in 2012, Jeff Dean showed the image of when the neural networks could recognize a picture of a cat, right, and identify it. This is the early versions of Brain, right? And so, we all talked about a couple of decades. I don't think we'll quite get there by 2030. So my sense is it's slightly after that. But I would stress it doesn't matter like what that definition is, because you will have mind-blowing progress on many dimensions. Maybe AI can create videos. We have to figure out as a society, how do we need some system by which we all agree that this is AI generated and we have to disclose it in a certain way, because how do you distinguish reality otherwise?
Yeah, there's so many interesting things you said. So first of all, just looking back at this recent, now feels like distant history with Google Brain. I mean, that was before TensorFlow was made public and open sourced. So the tooling matters too, combined with GitHub ability to share code. Then you have the ideas of attention transformers and the diffusion now. And then there might be a new idea that seems simple in retrospect, but it will change everything. And that could be the post-training, the inference time innovations. And I think Shad Cian tweeted that Google is just one great UI from completely winning the AI race, meaning like UI is a huge part of it. Like how that intelligence, I think Logan Kirkpatrick likes to talk about this right now. It's an LLM, but when is it going to become a system where you're talking about shipping systems versus shipping a particular model? Yeah, that matters too. How the system is manifests itself and how it presents itself to the world. That really, really matters.
Oh, hugely so. There are simple UI innovations which have changed the world, right? And I absolutely think so. We will see a lot more progress in the next couple of years. I think AI itself on a self-improving track for UI itself. Like, today
Yes.
we are like constraining the models. The models can't quite express themselves in terms of the UI to people. But that is if you think about it, we've kind of boxed them in that way. But given these models can code, they should be able to write the best interfaces to express their ideas over time, right?
That is an incredible idea. So their API is already open. So you can create a really nice agentic system that continuously improves the way you can be talking to an AI.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is the interface. And then, of course, the incredible multimodal aspect of the interface that Google's been pushing.
These models are natively multimodal. They can easily take content from any format, put it in any format. They can write a good user interface. They probably understand your preferences better than over time. And so all this is like the evolution ahead, right? And so that goes back to where we started the conversation. I think there'll be dramatic evolutions in the years ahead.
Maybe one more kitchen question. This even further ridiculous concept of P-Doom. So the philosophically minded folks in the AI community think about the probability that AGI and then ASI might destroy all of human civilization. I would say my P doom is about 10%. Do you ever think about this kind of long-term threat of ASI? And what would your P doom be?
Look, I mean, for sure. Look, I've both been very excited about AI, but I've always felt this is a technology, we have to actively think about the risks and work very, very hard to harness it in a way that it all works out well. On the PDOM question, look, it's won't surprise you to say that's probably another micro kitchen conversation that pops up once in a while, right? And given how powerful the technology is, maybe stepping back, when you're running a large organization, if you can kind of align the incentives of the organization, you can achieve pretty much anything, right? Like, if you can get kind of people all marching in towards like a goal in a very focused way, in a mission-driven way, you can pretty much achieve anything. But it's very tough to organize all of humanity that way. But I think if PDOM is actually high, at some point, all of humanity is like aligned in making sure that's not the case, right? And so we'll actually make more progress against it, I think. So the irony is, so there is a self-modulating aspect there. Like, I think if humanity collectively puts their mind to solving a problem, whatever it is, I think we can get there. So because of that, I think I'm optimistic on the PDOM scenarios, but that doesn't mean I think the underlying risk is actually pretty high. But I have a lot of faith in humanity kind of rising up to meet that moment.
That's really, really well put. I mean, as the threat becomes more concrete and real, humans do really come together and get their shit together. Well, the other thing I think people don't often talk about is probability of doom without AI. So there's all these other ways that humans can destroy themselves, and it's very possible, at least I believe so, that AI will help us become smarter, kinder to each other, more efficient. It'll help more parts of the world flourish where it would be less resource constrained, which is often the source of military conflict and tensions and so on. So we also have to load into that. What's the P-doom without AI? With AI, P-doom with AI, and P-doom without AI. Because it's very possible that AI will be the thing that saves human civilizations from all the other threats.
I agree with you. I think it's insightful. Look, I felt like to make progress on some of the toughest problems, would be good to have AI like pair helping you, right? And like so that resonates with me for sure. Yeah.
Quick pause. Bathroom break.
Yeah,
No.
let's do that. Yeah,
All right.
let's do that.
If Notebook LM was the same, like what I saw today with Beam, if it was compelling in the same kind of way, blew my mind. It was incredible. I didn't think it's possible. I didn't
One
think
day,
it's
my hope
possible
is
to
like,
pull.
can you imagine like the US president, the Chinese president being able to do something like Beam with the live meet translation working well? So they're both sitting and talking, make progress a bit more.
Yeah, just for people listening, we took a quick bathroom break, and now we're talking about the demo I did. We'll probably post it somewhere, somehow, maybe here. I got a chance to experience Beam, and it's hard to describe it in words how real it felt with just, what is it, 6 cameras. It's incredible. It's incredible.
It's one of the toughest products. If you can't quite describe it to people, even when we show it in slides, etc. Like you don't know what it is. You have to kind of experience it.
On the world leaders front, on politics, geopolitics, there's something really special. Again, with studying World War II and how much could have been saved if Chamberlain met Stalin in person. And I sometimes also struggle explaining to people, articulating why I believe meeting in person for world leaders is powerful. It just seems naive to say that, but there's something there in person. And with Beam, I felt that same thing. And then I'm unable to explain. All I kept doing is what like a child does. You look real, and I mean, I don't know if that makes meetings more productive or so on, but it certainly makes them more the same reason you want to show up to work versus remote sometimes, that human connection. I don't know what that is. It's hard to put into words. There's something beautiful about great teams collaborating on a thing that's not captured by the productivity of that team or by whatever on paper. Like some of the most beautiful moments you experience in life is at work. Pursuing a difficult thing together for many months.
Oh.
there's nothing like it.
You're in the trenches, and
Yeah.
you do form bonds that way for sure.
And to be able to do that like somewhat remotely in that same personal touch, I don't know, that's a deeply fulfilling thing. I know a lot of people, I personally hate meetings because a significant percent of meetings when done poorly don't serve a clear purpose. So, but that's a meeting problem. That's not a communication problem. If you can improve the communication for the meetings that are useful, it's just incredible. So yeah, I was blown away by the great engineering behind it. And then we get to see what impact that has. That's really interesting, but just incredible engineering. Really impressive.
No, it is. And obviously, we'll work hard over the years to make it more and more accessible. But yeah, even on a personal front outside of work meetings, a grandmother who's far away from her grandchild and being able to, have that kind of an interaction, right? All that I think will end up being very nothing substitutes being in person. But, it's not always possible. You could be a soldier deployed, right? Trying to talk to your loved ones. So I think, so that's what inspires us.
When you and I hung out last year and took a walk, I remember, I don't think we talked about this, but I remember, outside of that, seeing dozens of articles written by analysts and experts and so on that Sundar Pichai should step down because the perception was that Google was definitively losing the AI race, has lost its magic touch in the rapidly evolving technological landscape. And now, a year later, it's crazy. You showed this plot of all the things that were shipped over the past year. It's incredible. And Gemini Pro is winning across many benchmarks and products as we sit here today. So take me through that experience when there's all these articles saying you're the wrong guy to lead Google through this. Google is lost. It's done. It's over. To today where Google is winning again. What were some low points during that time?
Look, lots to unpack. Obviously, the main bet I made as a CEO was to really, make sure the company was approaching everything in a AI first way. Really, setting ourselves up to develop AGI responsibly, right? And make sure we're putting out products which embodies that things that are very, very useful for people. So look, I knew even through moments like that last year, I had a good sense of what we were building internally, right? So I'd already made, many important decisions, bringing together teams of the caliber of Brain and DeepMind and setting up Google DeepMind. There were things like we made the decision to invest in TPUs 10 years ago. So we knew we were scaling up and building big models. Anytime you're in a situation like that, a few aspects. I'm good at tuning out noise, right? Separating signal from noise. Do you scuba dive? Like, have you? No. It's amazing. Like, I'm not good at it, but I've done it a few times. But sometimes you jump in the ocean, it's so choppy. But you go down 1 feet under, it's the calmest thing in the entire universe, right? So there's a version of that, right? Like, running Google, you may as well be coaching Barcelona or Real Madrid, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have a bad season. So there are aspects to that. But, look, I'm good at tuning out the noise. I do watch out for signals. It's important to separate the signal from the noise. So there are good people sometimes making good points outside. So you want to listen to it. You want to take that feedback in. But, internally, like, you're making a set of consequential decisions, right? As leaders, you're making a lot of decisions. Many of them are like inconsequential. Like it feels like, but over time you learn that most of the decisions you're making on a day-to-day basis doesn't matter. Like you have to make them and you're making them just to keep things moving. But you have to make a few consequential decisions, right? And we had set up the right teams, right leaders. We had world-class researchers. We were training Gemini. Internally, there are factors which were, for example, outside people may not have appreciated. I mean, TPUs are amazing, but we had to ramp up TPUs too. That took time, right? And to scale actually having enough TPUs to get the compute needed. But I could see internally the trajectory we were on, and I was so excited internally about the possibility. To me, this moment felt like one of the biggest opportunities ahead for us as a company. That the opportunity space ahead over the next decade, next 20 years is bigger than what has happened in the past. And I thought we were set up like better than most companies in the world to go realize that vision.
I mean, you had to make some consequential, bold decisions. Like you mentioned the merger of DeepMind and Brain. Maybe it's my perspective, just knowing humans. I'm sure there's a lot of egos involved. It's very difficult to merge teams, and I'm sure there were some hard decisions to be made. Can you take me through your process of how you think through that? Do you go to pull the trigger and make that decision? Maybe what were some painful points? How do you navigate those turbulent waters?
Look, we were fortunate to have two world-class teams, but you're right. Like it's like somebody coming and telling to you, take Stanford and MIT,
Right.
and then put them together and create a great department, right? And easier said than done. But we were fortunate, phenomenal teams. Both had their strengths. They were run very differently, right? Like Brain was kind of a lot of diverse projects, bottoms up, and out of it came a lot of important research breakthroughs. DeepMind at the time had a strong vision of how you want to build AGI, and so they were pursuing their direction. But I think through those moments, luckily tapping into, Jeff had expressed a desire to go back to more of a scientific individual contributor roots. He felt like management was taking up too much of his time, and Demis naturally, I think, was running DeepMind and was a natural choice there. But I think you're right. It took us a while to bring the teams together. Credit to Demis, Jeff, Korai, all the great people there. They worked super hard to combine the best of both worlds when you set up that team. A few sleepless nights here and there as we put that thing together. We were patient in how we did it so that it works well for the long term, right? And some of that in the moment, I think, yes, with things moving fast, I think you definitely felt the pressure. But I think we pulled off that transition well, and I think they've obviously doing incredible work, and there's a lot more incredible things ahead coming from them.
Like we talked about, you have a very calm, even-tempered, respectful demeanor. During that time, whether it's the merger or just dealing with the noise, were there times where frustration boiled over? Like, did you have to go a bit more intense on everybody than you usually would?
Probably, probably you're right. I think in the sense that it was a moment where we were all driving hard, but when you're in the trenches working with passion, you're going to have days, right? You disagree, you argue, but like all that, I mean, just part of the course of working intensely, right? And at the end of the day, all of us are doing what we are doing because the impact it can have. We are motivated by it. It's like for many of us, this has been a long-term journey, and so it's been super exciting. The positive moments far outweigh the kind of stressful moments. Just early this year, I had a chance to celebrate back to back over 2 days, like Nobel Prize for Jeff Hinton, and the next day a Nobel Prize for Demis and John Jumper. You worked with people like that. All that is super inspiring.
Is there something like with you where you had to like put your foot down, maybe with less versus more, where like I'm the CEO and we're doing this?
To my earlier point about consequential decisions you make, there are decisions you make people can disagree pretty vehemently, but at some point, like you make a clear decision and you just ask people to commit, right? Like you can disagree, but it's time to disagree and commit so that we can get moving. And whether it's putting the foot down or it's a natural part of what all of us have to do. And I think you can do that calmly and be very firm in the direction you're making the decision. And I think if you're clear, actually people over time respect that, right? Like if you can make decisions with clarity, I find it very effective in meetings where you're making such decisions to hear everyone out. I think it's important when you can to hear everyone out. Sometimes what you're hearing actually influences how you think about and you're wrestling with it and making a decision. Sometimes you have a clear conviction and you state so. Look, I this is how I feel, and this is my conviction, and you kind of placed a bet and you move on.
Are there big decisions like that? I'm kind of intuitively assume the merger was the big one.
I think that was a very important decision, for the company to meet the moment. I think we had to make sure we were doing that and doing that well. I think that was a consequential decision. There were many other things. We set up a AI infrastructure team, like to really go meet the moment, to scale up the compute we needed to, and really brought teams from disparate parts of the company, kind of created it to move forward. Bringing people, like getting people to kind of work together physically, both in London with DeepMind and what we call Gradient Canopy, which is where the Mountain View Google DeepMind teams are. But one of my favorite moments is I routinely walk like multiple times per week to the Gradient Canopy building, where our top researchers are working on the models. Sergey is often there amongst them, right? Like, just looking at getting an update on the model, seeing loss curves. So all that, I think the cultural part of getting the teams together back with that energy, I think ended up playing a big role too.
What about the decision to recently add AI mode? So Google search is the, as they say, the front page of the internet. It's like a legendary minimalist thing with 10 blue links. Like that's when people think internet, they think that page. And now you're starting to mess with that. So the AI mode, which is a separate tab, and then integrating AI in the results. I'm sure there were some battles in meetings on that one.
Look, in some ways, when mobile came, people wanted answers to more questions. So we're kind of constantly evolving it. But you're right, this moment, that evolution, because the underlying technology is becoming much more capable. You can have AI give a lot of context, but one of our important design goals, though, is when you come to Google search, you're going to get a lot of context, but you're going to go and find a lot of things out on the web. So that will be true in AI mode, in AI overviews, and so on. But I think to our earlier conversation, we are still giving you access to links, but think of the AI as a layer which is giving you context, summary. Maybe in AI mode, you can have a dialogue with it back and forth on your journey, right? But through it all, you're kind of learning what's out there in the world. So those core principles don't change. But I think AI mode allows us to push we have our best models there, right? Models which are using search as a deep tool. Really, for every query you're asking, kind of fanning out, doing multiple searches, like kind of assembling that knowledge in a way so you can go and consume what you want to, right? And that's how we think about it.
I got a chance to listen to a bunch of Liz Reed describe this. Two things stood out to me that she mentioned. One thing is what you were talking about is the query fan out, which I didn't even think about before, is the powerful aspect of integrating a bunch of stuff on the web for you in one place. So yes, it provides that context so that you can decide which page to then go on to. The other really, really big thing speaks to the earlier, in terms of productivity multiplier that we're talking about, that she mentioned, was language. So one of the things you don't quite understand is through AI mode, you make, for non-English speakers, you make sort of, let's say, English language websites accessible by in the reasoning process as you try to figure out what you're looking for. Of course, once you show up to a page, you can use a basic translate.
Yeah.
But that process of figuring it out, if you empathize with a large part of the world that doesn't speak English, their like web is much smaller in that original language. And so it unlocks that huge cognitive capacity there that we don't, you take for granted here with all the bloggers and the journalists writing about AI mode. You forget that this now unlocks, because Gemini is really good at translation.
No, it is. I mean, the multimodality, the translation, its ability to reason, we are dramatically improving tool use. As a putting that power in the flow of search, I think, look, I'm super excited with AI overviews. We've seen the product has gotten much better. We measure it using all kinds of user metrics. It's obviously driven strong growth of the product. And we've been testing AI mode. It's now in the hands of millions of people, and the early metrics are very encouraging. So look, I'm excited about this next chapter of search.
for people who are not thinking through or aware of this. So there's the 10 blue links with the AI overview on top that provides a nice summarization. You can expand it.
And you have sources and links now
Yep.
embedded. Yeah.
I believe, at least Liz said so. I actually didn't notice it, but there's ads in the AI overview also. I don't think there's ads in AI mode. When ads in AI mode? So no. when do you think? I mean, it's okay. We should say that in the 90s, I remember the animated GIFs